My name is William Corliss, and this is the Workplace Podcast. Brought to you in association with Yellowwood, providers of executive coaching, corporate training and facilitation. Your external learning and development partner. Each week we focus on a different aspect of the workplace. We hear from guest speakers who will be subject matter experts, who I believe are incredibly talented at what they do. These experts will give you a different perspective and insight to work life, with the aim of empowering you to take a different path to success in all aspects of work life. These perspectives will include career and personal success, leadership, high-performance teams, and creating a better work-life culture in your organisation. Yellowwood. Take a different path to success with your career, team, and organisation. Our guest today is Luke Monaghan. Luke has worked in leadership development on 4 continents, bringing a unique blend of experience, competence, and innovation to his work. He has published 14 books in the area of educational practice and social issues. He has facilitated groups from cabinet members and corporate teams to health professionals and organizational leaders, to teachers and students. His approach is engaging, respectful, challenging, and creative in order to unearth relevant and sustainable solutions. The more complex, the more he likes it. He is a director of 3 companies, the Mediation Foundation of Ireland, providing leadership and conflict resolution responses, the Consultant Academy, resourcing senior executives as they navigate the world of consulting, and Curum, resourcing excellence in education. And I must disclose, we are partners in the Mediation Foundation of Ireland. So Luke, welcome to the podcast.
Big revelation, William. Will the world be able for this great partnership being launched?
Yeah.
This is great. Good
so you do. Man. It's great to have you on the podcast. And I must say, for the listeners of the podcast, you're finally on the show. Finally on the podcast.
Took him a while to get round to me now, listeners. I'm a bit upset. Some partner he is. Yeah, I'm clearly just to fill in today. But I'll do my best.
Okay. And I must say, listen, Luke, I'm very fortunate to have you as a partner. You're that trusted advisor there. And I think everybody should know more about you in terms of what you offer. So I suppose in terms of today's podcast, it's really about making a difference to people's lives, and especially in the workplace. And today's topic is breakthrough conversations. So maybe let the listeners know, why might this be important in the workplace, breakthrough conversations?
I just find it such a common theme I'm picking up when I'm going in and out of groups and teams and training and doing the mediations and conflict. People are talking about this difficult conversation I have to have, and can you help me think it through? And it keeps me awake at night, or I know it's going to lead to things getting worse, not better. What should I do? And they keep framing it as a difficult conversation. So what I've really enjoyed in all the work I've done in conflict resolution is to reframe it. I reframe conflict as mediation and constructive outcomes. What can we do to go through the difficult issues? Let's not avoid them because they're there. And like death and taxes, conflict is inevitable. So let's actually deal with it, but to deal with it constructively. And this is where the concept of breakthrough conversations rather than breakdown conversations. Breakthrough is saying, do you know what? It's about, I've got 5 layers. We'll talk about that later. But the first key piece is the mindset that we come to a conversation. You know, if we come to a conversation, this is going to be difficult. This is going to be really, I don't know how it's going to work out. It's understandable, but is that mindset helpful? And I think breakthrough is a way to begin to get us questioning the mindset that perhaps this could be the conversation that really needs to happen, and could, if there's a reasonable engagement, could be a way through, put us on a pathway to something more positively happen. Because I'm spending so much time doing conflict resolution, which I love to do, but I would love to give people, and that's the work I'm doing with you all the time, to give people the skills they have to actually work through their stuff themselves with their teams, to have that confidence and competence. Do you know what? I can handle this. Our job, you use the word trusted advisor, is to be just that, I don't need to be you'll hate this phrase, William, but I don't need to be the sage on the stage. I'd prefer to be, it even gets worse now, the guide on the side. To help.
I love that.
Yeah, I love anyone who, I'm afraid I've got loads of those, but it really is, it speaks to a mindset. I'm not there to shine. I'm there to help you shine. I'm there to help the people I'm working with get through their stuff. Anyway, that's a little bit of where I'm coming from.
I really like that, Luke, because that's how we first, I suppose when we first met each other around 5 years ago, we really started getting aligned in terms of our own values, in terms of that empowerment piece, is just give people the tools to, sort their, issues themselves or get the solutions themselves. So really what you're offering here is a part of their conflict resolution toolbox is how to do these breakthrough conversations.
Absolutely. And just to have a sense, because like all of these pieces in the workplace, it's that self-awareness piece. It's then the awareness of the other and tuning into the others, but it's having that, as you call it, the toolbox, the skill set. You're not just off a session with people who are working in the financial sector and just listening to them. They were saying, our difficulty is, Luke, that we're one-trick ponies. We're really good at the finance. Oh, if you've got a financial problem, come to us. But when we explored it, they realized, but a lot of my work, Luke, is working with people and team members, and and the numbers are there, but what's more important is the relationship or the lack of relationship. And that's the piece I need more and more support with. The further into the organization, the more promotions I get to different responsibilities, the more I realize, it's the people stuff I need real support with. And my job is not just to, as we were doing this morning, not just to give them a whole lot of tips, but actually to evoke from them their own abilities, get them out there so that you can see them. Okay, I can do this. I didn't realize I could do this. And I think it's how you and I like to facilitate and work with people, is to draw it out of people. But I shouldn't say this because William's here. One of the first times we were working together, we were both doing a course on negotiation skills in two different sets of rooms in the same building. And you know what was happening? I think he was just trying to sneak into my room all the time. He kept saying, I'm in the wrong room. And then he would take down everything on the slide and then run out again. And then 10 minutes later, he'd be, I'm sorry, the wrong room again. It was a bit of we had to end up putting a little sign on the door that said, Luke is here, William is not here, but it's what I loved about all of that is that we are, as you say, and it's important, in sync on values. The word that you is so important in the work that we do. It's why I enjoy it so much. It's the values. And one of those core values is, how can we help you be the best that you can be? That's what we want to do around breakthrough conversations, a conflict or leadership, whatever it is. How can we help you do what you want to really do anyway?
Well, thank you for sharing that little story about my little mistakes and keeping walking into your room, which was, I have to say, there were signposted the exact same sign. And you mentioned before there about the 5 layers of breakthrough conversations. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, because when you sort of dig, because there's lots of, there's a book called Vital Conversation. There's a book called Assertive Conversations. So I'm trying to find something that you can get your hands around. And when I'm doing conflict coaching with someone else, and I talk about breakthrough conversation, the first one I talk about the mindset. The mindset we bring to the conversation really influences how it's going to play out. If you come with a mindset, however understandable, that says this is going to be a disaster, this is not going to work, do you know what? This is going to be a disaster, it's not really going to work out. So how can we credibly, that's obviously a crucial word, we're not into makey-uppy, we're into what I call realistic optimism about this conversation. If it was to go reasonably well, what would that look like? That mindset, I think that's a hugely important first layer. The second layer is to examine the relationship you have with the person or persons you're going to have the conversations with. What's my relationship? Is it a very transactional one? Is it a one of empowerment? Is it one of manager to report or report to manager? How would you characterize it in terms of, trust? How would you characterize it in terms of openness, of dealing with different perspectives? On a scale of 1 to 5, where would it be on that? Is there anything that perhaps you could see that would allow that relationship to evolve to a better, to improve? Really crucial to think about that. And how can this conversation, because it's a breakthrough conversation, you really want it to be real, because breakthrough conversations are about a commitment to, as I define it, it's a commitment to uncover and address what really matters. That's the definition of the breakthrough conversation, a commitment to uncover and address. Because sometimes what happens is we uncover it, but we don't deal with it. Or we might address it in the wrong way, but we haven't got to the real issue. Uncovering is really important. And we're doing that with the dispositions of curiosity, courage, and constructiveness. There's me 3 C's. So that's important in that mindset, that definition, and that relationship. How are we committing to uncover, committing to addressing, but bringing that, because I think it's so important in anything we're doing, that commitment, that disposition of curiosity. I wonder what I'll find out in this I wonder what the breakthrough will be for me. Because sometimes we're thinking, I have that conversation with that person because the behavior isn't really great in the workplace. What's that going to tell me? The layers, so we talked about mindset, relationship. The next layer is the process. Now that we've understood the issue and what's it about, what's the best process in the conversation that's going to give it the best chance of having the breakthrough, of having the insight, of looking at the way to address it? What's the process? Because again, that's part of the planning, the preparation. And sometimes it's the most underdone aspect of a breakthrough conversation. Preparation. What do you do before you're even in the room or on the call with the person? The preparation. So again, just referencing that group I was with earlier on, they were talking about how do we improve engagement, Luke? How do we improve engagement? And I said, well, the first thing we need to do is what's the purpose of the engagement? Because you unless you're clear on the purpose of it, then once you're clear on the purpose of engagement, then you go to the second P, you look at the process of engagement. Because you're clear what you want to do, now you need to figure out how you're going to do it. So the next layer, then the fourth layer of the breakthrough conversation for me is what I call the ownership. Are we both in there? Are we both owning the conversation, committing to it, going to go there, going to see what's uncovered, going to provide that constructive, safe space, that psychologically safe space that's crucial for a conversation like this to really happen and to really have an impact? That there is the confidentiality, that there is the respect for the differences, that there is the respect to what's going to play out afterwards. So I think that ownership piece, and we're going to commit to what's going to come through with it. We're going to take our responsibility. I think that's an important layer, and they're not sequential. They're a dynamic mix. I think so. It's really important. Yeah.
I was just about to ask you on that, because sometimes people might say, well, you follow a method or a formula. And in my head is typical workplace challenges. I don't understand my manager, for example, or my manager doesn't listen to me, or there's a change process going on. And I talked about that in other podcasts. And so in terms of how you would use these different layers, then what you're saying is you kind of use them as the context suits. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. They're like little signposts that are around this conversation that I need to watch that one now. And something that you do so well in coaching, that you're just helping people to really think where they are now and where they might need to go and what questions might help out. Because a really interesting question that you could ask, and I know you've often talked about similar questions in your work, is, what change could I make that would make a difference to you? I think it's a really, really valuable for a leader to ask somebody who's, maybe a report of theirs or somebody they're trying to really connect with. And it shows an openness, vulnerability, that's credible and that's real. But what change could I make that would really make a positive impact to you? I think wouldn't that be a great, I'm just putting together, and I know we're working on something at the moment as well, about a series of questions, that would just declare an intent, particularly if you're leading the conversation, or if you're the to use that word, power person in the conversation. How you lead it out is going to be crucial. It determines how it's going to go again. There's that work, we both know it, Patrick Lencioni's, 5 dysfunctions of a team. The most important one is trust. The most important layer is trust. But watching that little, and always recommend anyone who's listening to watch out for some of his videos. He talks for 2 minutes about the importance of vulnerability-based trust. That as the leader, you're leading out to say sometimes, I'm not too sure myself. What do you think? I mean, not having all the answers. There's a great freedom in that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because we have a podcast on trust with our colleague and partner, Paula Milligan, right? Yes. So we've got into detail on that. And what I've noticed is a common theme is leadership and vulnerability, that aspect of vulnerability. And I don't think we talk about that enough.
Absolutely.
So you're saying trust with vulnerability. What does that look like? Because if I am the person that has, a senior leader, I mightn't feel safe to talk to them. Or then the other side of the coin is there could be a leader here that doesn't want to get into that difficult conversation and just avoids the conversation. So, where does trust or vulnerability come in terms of those two differing perspectives?
Absolutely, because we have to be careful not to over open ourselves too far in an unsafe way, which is why that psychological safety piece is really important. And that you really need, if you're the leader, you need to lead out with this vulnerability. And it's not, you're not having to live with this person, you're working with them. But it's something like, do you know what, William, you know this stuff better than I do. Will you lead out on this? Or, do you know what? I think I overreacted yesterday. I'm sorry about that. It's just that piece. And, here, do you know what? I think I'm pretty strong at this. If that's okay with you, I'll go with that. It's that honesty stuff. I think that makes such a difference in terms of the connection with people to realize, okay, it's safe. But people always have to make that risk assessment. Is it actually safe? How far can I go? But always have that devil's advocate voice in our head. Am I just finding a way to block the conversation, or am I being realistic? So there's that realism about how will this play out, even if I'm outside my comfort zone. What they call another way of looking at I was just looking at it recently, called the zone of uncomfortable debate, ZOOD. A guy called Eden Charles, if you're interested in diversity and all that area, is fabulous. But he talks about this, how in leadership, how much of our conversations at a leadership level need to be in the ZOOD category, the zone of uncomfortable debate, which is about that we're pushing each other, stretching each other, good challenge, healthy challenge. But the research showed that in key leadership teams, that only 5% of the conversations were in that ZOOD category. That most of the time people stay in the safe zone. So that's a question for all of us. How ready are we? Back to the mindset layer for a breakthrough conversation. Not every conversation needs to be a breakthrough. Sometimes it's okay to say, how was your weekend? But when it's necessary, are we able to go there? When the circumstances require it, have we got the courage, which is one of the dispositions that I outlined in the definition of a breakthrough conversation that we need. We need courage. Courage is about going somewhere where it feels uncomfortable, but you still go there. That's what courage is. And that's hard.
Yeah. And there's a similarity between lots of different leadership theories. So I studied adaptive leadership in Harvard, and they talk about the work, and work avoidance by not having the difficult conversation or making that difficult decision. And that's the work. And, it's funny, you talk about trust is, I know, for example, as a business partner, I can really trust you because I know you will be honest with me. And I notice a lot in my mediations is sometimes it's when people weren't honest and they find out later on then that people withheld something because there's a positive intention there. They didn't want to hurt their feelings or they didn't want to cause conflict, and sometimes there's unintended consequences to our original positive intentions. And for me, I noticed that we have a huge level of trust between us because we're able to say, listen, Luke, I need to say something. It's not easy for me to say it, and with your permission, is it okay to say this, or to give you this feedback, or this is something I really think you should know, and I think it brings our relationship and everybody else's relationship to a deeper level. What are your thoughts?
And I think it just adds such value, and how important it is to nurture, to watch out for and nurture those connections, because they're the ones, and I've said this to you, William, many times, that in the work that I do, even though I'm a slight introvert and I'm out there all the time, but I choose carefully who I want to work with, but I always want to work with someone. I don't want to be a solo player, because yes, I can do it, but it's not as satisfying as it is to work with someone like you, or someone, the other people that I work with, because there's so much more to gain from that trust, from that. You have to be a bit fearless and have to say, is it okay we talk about this? Because I think that's going to add to both of us. And what that does, all those words that we know about synergy, it's greater than the sum of its parts, all of that is true, but it is work, because it's worth nurturing, it's worth treasuring. And you just stay with that because of the value of it. Because again, we can't be asking other leaders to have those collaborative relationships with their teams, to have those trusted advisors, if we ourselves don't actually model that. For me, the reason I've been evolving this theme of breakthrough conversations is because I've tried my best to engage in them and to take the impact of them. And not all of them go well, but they happen, and I will continue to have them, and I will continue to create the ground where that's possible, and allow people come back to me and have breakthrough conversations with me. They've just added so much to the quality of the work, never mind to who I am as a person.
And I think in terms of what we're noticing is a lot of teams are in a lot of flux at the moment because of the pandemic, and there's a lot of change going on, or there's a lot of disruption going on. That means a lot of change. Management programs are going through, or reorganizations are going on within companies. And for me, what I've noticed, especially in the past, a common theme that I would have when I'm doing teamwork or team development is at least you know where you stand with a certain leader. It doesn't matter what style they have taken. It's about that clarity, isn't it?
It is. And if you can have that, and that clarity is so important, because again, with that group I was with this morning, because it's so fresh in my mind, we were talking about that resilience piece, and the resilience, and the most fundamental dimension of a good resilience for the professional context, never mind the personal one, is clarity of values, and that they're in sync with your purpose. And of course, it's not going to be that every time, every day, but that the vast majority of our time, whether it's in teams, as we were talking about that group this morning, as I was talking about that group this morning, and working with individuals, can I see through to my purpose? Does it in any way clarify the values that I have? So it's putting the work into that, into the reflection into that, having the trusted collaborators like yourself to work that through. Because one of the great things of working with you, William, is that we're working this stuff through. We don't pretend to have the answers. What we do have is the variety of experiences, and you've such a range of experience and a wealth of insight and wisdom to bringing to your work, and the quality of impact you have on the people you work with, and me with mine. But that collaboration, when we stand around a whiteboard that looks empty, and then in 20 minutes it's full of all sorts of fun stuff. How good is that? How good is that? But it's based on the layer of trust. It's not on who's going to get the next big gig. It's on, this is really interesting stuff. Let's explore. Let's go there.
And I do think it is that you create the time for this. So a lot of teams that I know that are successful, even though there's a lot of flux going on, is the people who've put in the work already in terms of making that team resilient, which in turn is making the organization resilient. So they're able to adapt and survive in terms of the challenges that the pandemic are offering. And what I notice even about our work is that, we've allowed that space to emerge. So sometimes I just rock up for a coffee and suddenly we'll enter ourselves into a conversation, and I'll know, because you're just simply listening, and I'm thinking about the last time that we met, was that I was able to tap into, what was going on for me in that moment. What were my biases, what was influencing my decision making. And I was allowed to, because you allowed me that space just to listen. It was a bit like a coaching session, really. And I was allowed to work it out for myself, at the same time inform you what was going on for me. And then you were able to know what my triggers were, or what my weaknesses were, and what I was actually going to do about it. You know, you weren't taking any responsibility on. I was holding myself to account. But sometimes it's about creating that space for people, isn't it, Luke?
Isn't it? Absolutely. And both of us able to claim it when we need it. I think that's the trust, because there's times when I just need to, this is what's going on here, love to bounce this off. But I think that last part you said is we each take the responsibility for our stuff ourselves. And I think that's what we're responsible for, our own stuff. But we get so much from the collaborations and the synergy and the trust, so that we can, on a consistent basis, have breakthrough conversations. They don't all have to be huge events. Small conversations can be breakthrough conversations if we bring that mindset to it. We bring that disposition of curiosity to it. I wonder what's going to happen if I come at this conversation in this way. I wonder if I ask a question like that. A great question I get leaders to ask sometimes is, why should somebody be led by you? Can you answer that question? Why should somebody be led by you? It's a really important question for us all to ask, as if in any sort of leadership role, if we're wanting people to come with us on the journey. And
I think that's what I really like about the work that we do is, we are there to, I suppose, have those thought-provoking conversations with leaders and with teams. And really it's about, people will often challenge you back in terms of the theory.
Yeah, of course.
And a lot of the times what we do is we actually role play it, in the session, say, here's what it might look like. And what I like about you, Luke, is that you role model that for me, is you actually, live this, in terms of the way you behave, in terms of our interactions, our conversations. And I think if leaders started role modeling this a little bit more, that would have a huge impact on the team, huge impact on the organizational culture. So this is where we're getting to on this podcast, is how do we make a difference by having, those conversations and incorporating those signposts, those 5 layers that you were talking about, so people can navigate those breakthrough conversations to get more success.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the trust must start with ourselves. Can I trust myself to go there? I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be fully equipped. I have to be open. I have to have some, that important awareness layer that's so important in the emotionally intelligent leader. That's crucial. That really builds on all my natural competencies, but I'm really working about that. But is that trust in self, that I can go there, that I'm reasonably okay in my skin most of the time. That's really good. And if I'm not okay in my skin, I'm doing something about that. I'm finding some other people, because our job in the work that we do together and what we do separately is we're there to work with leaders to map out where they're at and where they want to go and how they can get there. And to know that we're there as that trusted advisor, the phrase used at the start, how crucial that is. It's not about giving you the 10 steps to or whatever. We have all of those frameworks in the background, really useful. But the most useful thing you and I offer to leaders is we'll be with you on the journey. We'll figure this out with you. We'll equip you, we'll empower you so that eventually you won't need us anymore. But our job is to press on a few of those sore points so that we can have those zone of uncomfortable debates, so we can have those breakthrough conversations, so you can get really added value. That's what you want when you engage with someone like ourselves, or I engage with somebody that I want to be brought somewhere when I'm not too sure of the terrain, but I'm with somebody who has a good sense of that terrain and who will take me through it and help me to get familiar, help me to pick up the signposts, help me to be able to continue. I mean, that's why I know you and I love what we do, because it's not just churning out the same stuff. It's actually really customizing it to what you, the leader, needs at this point. Whether you're a leader of a team, a division, an organization, doesn't matter. What's it like to have somebody with you showing you some new terrain and mapping that out? How exciting is that?
Oh yeah, and and there's a huge reward in that for us when we see the output, and you can see how people go, that's really making a difference, or that's making an impact. And you mentioned something there about, uh, sometimes people put pressure on themselves to do it, in a perfect way, and often perfectionism is seen as the enemy of the good. So is there any advice you give to people, in terms of that, you know, that
Yeah,
perfectionism?
I have something I use a lot with different groups called my two horizons. There's the horizon of enough. Do we know what that looks like for us? What's enough? That in terms, are we striving? It's always good to be striving to be better. I think it's a hijack to be striving for perfection. Unless you're working in a very precise industry that needs to have perfection in the pharma industry or something like that. But if for your own personal leadership, perfection can be a paralysis, whereas improvement, better, is the way to go. So what's the horizon? And then the other horizon that really helps me around this is the horizon of credible aspiration. And I think we need to know where we are in that zone between the horizon of enough, the horizon of credible aspiration. And I purposely put in that word credible aspiration because sometimes our aspirations need to be challenged and checked because we could be putting too much or too little pressure on ourselves. So that credibility, which I think is such an important leadership word in these times, and it fits so well there. We need to be credible to ourselves as well as to our people, to our teams. And we need to have that parsed out. We need to have that understood well for ourselves. And what does it mean to be credible? And what's that look like? I think that's a really interesting journey to travel.
And it's there's a fine line, isn't there, with leadership, and that's why it's so hard because it's a balancing act. Because if you do too much of one thing, that creates its own problems, and too much of another. So it's really about finding that balance, and that's why it's all about context in terms of our work.
Absolutely, because again, it's what is the healthy amount of stress and pressure? Because there's so much juggling going on in leadership and minding that. And again, it's a mindset to that. If I am striving for perfection, it's probably I'm going to drop some of those balls I have in the air. If I'm striving to be better and self-aware, perhaps I will do the juggling at a better pace. Perhaps I won't put as much pressure on me to put the balls too high. I know we're using some visual images because that's sometimes the way I learn stuff. But it's, what I'd invite the listener to do is to think about, how are you approaching your leadership team, division, organization? And how much are you thinking about what's the horizon of enough? What's the horizon of credible aspiration in it? How often are you having these breakthrough conversations? What support do you need to help you be a better you, to have a better team, division, or organization? And I think that's where all the services you offer, coaching and training and the stuff that we're doing together around, this sort of work and the mediation work, the leadership development stuff. I mean, there's such useful support that are there for all of us just to draw on.
Yeah. And I receive coaching myself, and supervision, and I think they're a fantastic resource that I suppose we should all have someone that we can go to and have that kind of, warts and all conversation. Okay. And something like that struck me there was a lot of people, have this notion that we should just be kind of nice, to people all the time. But sometimes being over nice is actually doing someone a disservice. Would you agree? It is that balance, isn't it?
It is, and it can be exhausting to be nice all the time too. It's just exhausting. Whereas I think trying to find a way to be real, to be respectful, to be credible, that involves being nice, but is not exclusive of other things. Because sometimes the most real and credible thing I can do to someone is to say, I've got a bit of a tough message that I hope we can work together to work through it. And you may not like hearing it or like me because I'm telling you, but I just respect you and I respect the work relationship that we have. I think we need to have this conversation. So can we do that? So the nice way would be, of course, to say, no, everything's grand. You're doing great, doing great. Let me know if there's anything I can do to make your life easier. You know, that's not real, but it's very common. One of the most common approaches to conflict is avoidance. And the second most common approach to conflict is to have a row. So I think what we've been interested in the work that we're doing is to find that middle ground, that constructive approach. Yes, we'll deal with it, but we'll deal with it constructively. Maybe I should mention my 3 deals. Now, can I stick in? Will I share the 3 deals, William?
I don't think I have a choice, Luke.
Good. See what I have to. I twist his arm very effectively every so often, but no, I just find them useful. Again, the 3 deals: deal with it early, deal with it directly, deal with it constructively. Because you'll notice around difficult conversations, we tend not to deal with it early. We wait too long, and it becomes bigger. We tend to talk to others about it rather than the person themselves. And then it tends to be quite destructive because we haven't figured out ways to manage things constructively. And that's what I know you and I are very committed to. It's to developing the skill set, the toolboxes, all of that around a constructive way to deal with difficult stuff. And that's what's so enjoyable.
And you know, for me, you use that word constructive, but it's really about your building relationships, or by having those, you know, breakthrough conversations, you're investing in the relationship by putting your emotional energy into a place where it requires effort. It requires work. Isn't that true?
It does. It does require work. And that's why we need to do that work for ourselves to ensure that we're equipped, that we're confident and competent. You know, you don't just because you've read the 5 layers of the breakthrough conversations, off you go. There's work for the self, but it's positive work. It's constructive work. It's becoming, I think, that great description of a leader. It's about being yourself, but more skillfully. Love that description. Don't know where I read that in the last day. Be yourself, but more skillfully. So it's not, people say, be yourself. Sure. But as a leader, more skillfully. I think that applies everywhere. A great line. So that's a good encouragement to us all. Just more skillfully.
I really like that, Luke. Thanks for sharing that. And we're coming towards the end of the podcast now, Luke. So what I'd like to do is invite you to do 2 things. One is, what's your final, you know, takeaway to our listeners here? And if they wanted to get in touch with you, Luke, what's the best way to do that?
Okay. Well, I suppose the big takeaway is to see breakthrough conversations as something you can do, that's worth doing, and you can really train the brain to get better at it because of the impact it'll have for you and for others. Really worth it. Check out myself and William, as he revealed to the world at the start, we're partners now in the Mediation Foundation of Ireland, mfi.ie. We're providing all sorts of skills there and opportunities there, mediation training, conflict conversations in the workplace, breakthrough conversations, conflict coaching, all sorts of lovely stuff. And that's happening, which has really been wonderful because of the online world, with international participants from the Lebanon to the Ivory Coast to Australia. We're having them all there, as well as a few of us out Irish. We're still at the Irish in. All good to have the locals. But so plenty there, and very happy if somebody wants to get a little bit of a chart, a free page on breakthrough conversation. Just email us through the mfi.ie website. We'll be very happy to send that out to you, and anything question you might want to put to it, myself or William will be very happy to answer it for you and take it a bit further for you if you wish.
Luke, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Hopefully I won't make you wait as long as this time to appear.
It's been noted. It's in the red book. It's in the red book, Mr. William.
We might have to have a breakthrough conversation of ourselves.
It's great. Great to be with you.
So thank you so much for being on the podcast, Luke, and thank you for listening.
Good stuff. Thank you, William.
That's it for this episode of the Workplace Podcast. My special thanks to this week's guest for a wonderful discussion. If you want to get in contact with the podcast about a workplace topic or a particular challenge that you're facing, contact me via Twitter at different paths. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, William Corliss, Corless, or go to my website, www.yellowwood.ie. Yellowwood, your external learning and development partner. Provider executive coaching, facilitation and training. Take a different path to success with your career, leadership, team and organisation.